Jesus says, when you bring up, look, Lord, I did all this, and Jesus still says, I didn't know you.
Yeah.
Because you're not doing it for him. You're doing it for your own self-pride.
Yep.
I felt good. Look, I'm virtuous. I'm bringing healing. I care about humanity. Do you, though? Or is it about making yourself feel better?
Welcome back to another episode of PPK. Back at it again, boys. What's going on?
Another one.
It is another one. Man, we had a great episode last week when we were essentially talking about the final battle and have gotten some really good feedback so far. So we appreciate, again, all you listeners out there. And so those of you who may be joining us new, welcome to the show. And so we normally kick this off with inspiration. Meeks, what's the inspiration for this show?
Yeah, so last week we really started out with the Sister Lucia quote on this whole final battle, and I thought that a way to kind of segue into this episode and kind of move forward as we try to stay with relevant topics, and we want to arm people with the right information to move forward. And last few weeks we've been working on exposing evils and really trying to attack those and see those are, because this is, like Kenny was saying last week, this is the devil's playground, and he's going to hide things that we're not going to see, and there's a lot of subtle issues that we're not paying attention to. And so now moving forward, we want to say, okay, what do you do now? Where does this battle take us? What are we supposed to do with this information that we now know? Or how do we fight this? And the second part of that quote that we brought up last week was, don't be afraid, because anyone who operates for the sanctity of marriage and the family will always be contended and opposed in every way, because this is a decisive issue. However, Our Lady has already crushed its head. I think that's so important, because it's so easy to be in despair or like, dude, is the world ending? What's going on right now? Instead of seeing this as, maybe this is a necessary issue that we're coming across. Maybe this is a necessary battle. And we're going to bring up a lot of other stuff that different people say about, making the church stronger and maybe smaller. And a lot of people are being exposed for what they are, and Satan's being exposed in a lot of different ways. And for us, I think it's to just stay the course. You already said, Our Lady's already won. Jesus already won. He's already died for our sins. He's already, heaven's there. Eternity's already there. We have the chance for it. We just got to continue on our course and keep worrying about us, because these people are going to fall on themselves, everyone around us, and they're going to keep hating us, and it doesn't matter, because all we have to do is answer for ourselves in front of God at the end of the day. It's not going to be about anyone else but us. And so it's important for us to not follow into Chaz and stay into our own our own cities. Don't fall into those traps, and keep moving forward.
For me, it's what came to mind. A few people have talked to me about, like, do you think the world's ending? Like, and you can base us off of Scripture, you can base it off of, like, the final battle, you can base it off of the pandemic, whatever people love talking about. Like, do you think the world's going to end? And the thing that always comes to mind to me is that right now, this is you think about, like, the history of our church, this is such a time for saints to be made. And the unique thing about the Catholic Church that separates us from pretty much any other Christian denomination is the idea of redemptive suffering. Like, this is why we keep Jesus on the cross. Like, there's power in the cross, there's power in suffering, and it can actually save other souls. And we're praying for the souls that are awaiting heaven and purgatory. There's so much that goes to the power of redemptive suffering. So we think about all the suffering that's going on. We've talked about, like, children being trafficked. We talked about kids that grow up without a father. We talked about abuse. We talked about the evil of Marxism. We talked about, like, a virus that's happening right now. Like, is the world ending? And it's like, well, what a time to purge out sin and make saints, and for God to show his true glory. Is that going to be easy? No. Are we going to lose some followers? Is the church going to lose some followers? Probably. Just like when Jesus spoke more and more truth, people walked away. But like Meeks was saying last week, he didn't say, oh, my bad. No. This is what I was saying. I know that was a little too harsh. Let me soften it up. But he said, no, do you guys want to leave too? And I think that's something we can really take moving forward, is like, don't lose that faith. Don't lose the courage, because the truth will always win. The truth is what sets us free, right? And there's really power in that. And I think it's something, what did Jesus do? Did he cower? No, he didn't care if you left, because he knew what was true. He knew what was ultimately good for us. So just kind of like moving forward, what can we take? Now we know this is a spiritual battle. We know this is so deep and satanic, and just sin is everywhere. And we have, people whether in the church or the faithful or in secular culture that are leading a lot of people astray. How can we fight this battle too, while still maintaining that peace, not letting it trouble us? Like what Sister Lucia talks about in this quote, like, don't be troubled, because Mary already crushed the head of Satan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, as Christians, we know that Christ already is victorious. He won the battle. Doesn't make our job any easier, but we already know that this is just a war we have to survive, right? Like St. Paul says, right? I've competed well. I've finished the race. I've kept the faith. Mm-hmm. And those are the things that we have to remind ourselves of, because it's so easy to do right now, or what's so easy to do right now is be completely overwhelmed and engulfed in the tsunami of the politics, of the craziness, of the fear that's out there. It's just, turn on any social media platform for 5 minutes, and then you find yourself discouraged, in despair, worried about your livelihood, maybe worried about your life, worried about your family, whatever it may be. And we have to, be mindful of that. Again, it's easier said than done, but that's, I think, part of what we're trying to say is stay in the course, as we, talk about that during this episode, remain encouraged and hopeful, but do your part, right? Because there is a part about us going into a much more smaller, faithful church, as we'll talk about that as far as the quotes are concerned. But one of the things I wanted to bring up, one of the quotes, as we were preparing for this episode, we were talking about different quotes, whether it be scripture, whether it be, people like Pope Emeritus Benedict as Father Joseph Ratzinger. But one of the things that came to mind, Keone, when you were talking was this, Jesus, one of the reflections I've been having, especially during the Lenten season, is when Jesus was before Pilate. And Pilate was like saying, do you not know I have the power to crucify you or not? And, and you're talking about what would Jesus do? Jesus was like, you have no power except that which has been given over to you. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you has the greater sin. And I think for all of the faithful out there, right, who aren't completely engulfed in drinking the Kool-Aid and aren't, cowering or pandering and trying to find your footing in all of this, because it is difficult. I think there's some well-intentioned people with good hearts that want to try to do the right thing, but it's so hard to figure out what that right thing is just remember who's actually in charge, right? Just like our Lord said to Pilate, it's like, no, the authority, quit making the politics or this movement, your ideology, your God, right? I think that's the part that's a little bit of a struggle right now, is just people are so consumed with it. Again, we fight injustices always. That's what we do as Christians. We've been fighting injustice from the beginning, but, we have to also entrust all of that work, all of that fruit to the will of God, and ask for the grace to be able to sustain and maintain and in our own fight, right? And I think that's part of what we're talking about, right, Meeks, is how can we do our part in moving forward?
Yeah, it's it's really about understanding, like knowing that Our Lady is one, or that Jesus is one, and being comfortable and finding peace within that. Because all of us, we try to educate ourselves as much as we can, mm-hmm. and look at all this corruption, and we're finding out a lot of different things that we haven't before, exposing ourselves to new things, and we try to do that for you guys. And then it's like we're up at night, like tweaking out because we don't know what to do with all this information. And it's like this idea, like you have the inner peace of just continue to grow in virtue, continue to find your pathway to heaven, continue to try to be better every day, educate yourself, but don't make that your whole entire life is trying to figure out, well, what was that's question for, trying to do like, all these kind of things. It's like they matter, but not in the greatest scheme of things. Not the little thing always matters and doesn't have to drive you towards insanity. Mm-hmm. And understanding that, like, have that inner peace, that trust, understand that you don't have to bow down to these people that are trying to make you kiss their shoes or do whatever the heck they're trying to do. That's not your responsibility. Is to make sure that when it's just you and God, he says, what did you do? You did all that you could. You didn't say, well, at least I didn't hurt these people's feelings, or I held back a million times, or this boss fired me because I said this. Like all that's going to matter is like, what did you do? How did you bring truth? And if you didn't do that, then that's on you. It doesn't matter if a boss could have fired you. It doesn't matter if you lost followers. Those things don't matter. And so I think for me, as I'm growing into and just, going on my journey, I'm 20 years, I just turned 20 years old. So as I'm figuring out my journey, I'm kind of understanding, like, why is it that sometimes I can be, kind of scared or hesitant to post something that may be controversial? Who cares? If I know it's truth and I understand that it's coming from a place where I'm just trying to show people a different side or whatever it is, then why do I have to be scared of it? Because the people of Chaz are going to get mad at me. These people who are literally like killing themselves, basically, like are rotting on the inside. I have to be scared of those people. I mean, we already talked about last week. This group, it doesn't end. Like, these people don't end. When what was it? Lenin? When Lenin wasn't enough, Stalin still wanted to kill him. It's like, Trotsky wasn't enough. They killed him. It's like this movement, it doesn't end ever. And so for us to try to cater towards it, it's never going to bring us peace. It's never going to bring us justice. It's only going to further whatever the heck they're trying to do. And I think for us, it's trying to understand, like, let's just find truth and stick with it and understand and have peace that we're doing the right thing and not have to worry about who's going to attack us or who's going to do this and that. At the end of the day, it won't matter. And so, we look at the Tim Gordons, who literally got fired by a bishop, really. I mean, a Catholic church, the Catholic Church fired him, basically, is what he's doing. And he has a daughter that needs a lot of help and
just had brain surgery.
She needs a lot of attention and special medical attention, and just that trust that, God's going to provide, and I'm going to have to go somewhere. So now he's going from Bakersfield to Mississippi. And I don't know about you guys, but I go to school in Ohio. I definitely don't want to go to Mississippi to live. and just that sort of trust, not that everyone's going to be able to do that, but there's a lot of opportunity for us to be martyrs in a certain way, in a different way. And I think we should really just stick to that and own those opportunities. That, like, so what if this company doesn't? Well, let's go to a different one. Oh, well, how about we start one? That's what capitalism is about. Or we talked about Kanye West and the revival. How about we start doing our thing? Let's take our matters in our own hands. The left and these crazies, they own the media, they own Hollywood. So why don't we start our own things then? Like, and just having some fight within us. I think that's the point of this episode. It's like, let's just start fighting back. Why do we have to sit and bow down to these people? They have no clue what they're doing. 1 minute it's this, next minute it's this. They don't know, it's a new name for this gender. It's new for that. I mean, these guys don't know what they're doing. It's always something, and it will never end. So we just got to keep fighting.
Yeah, and something that came to mind when you're talking about the gospel and what Jesus has been saying. I think it was last week. It was one of the gospels, and I don't know if you're thinking about it too. You can go into Father Ratzinger after, but the idea that I think a lot of, whether it be lay people, Catholic influencers, priests, I mean, I'm hoping, that they have these good intentions, right? They want to bring unity. They want to, fight the good fight and bring truth. But at the end of the day, Jesus says, when you bring up, look, Lord, I did all this. And Jesus still says, I didn't know you. Yeah. Because you're not doing it for him. You're doing it for your own self-pride. Yeah. I felt good. Look, I'm virtuous. I'm bringing healing. I care about humanity. Do you, though? Or is it about making yourself feel better? Yeah. And are you putting truth under the rug in the name of unity or in the name of some false virtue signaling, right? And that's what I want, for us to, like, that's a wake-up call. Like, this is why you stick to the truth. Because at the end of the day, whether you were known as the peacemaker, Jesus says, like, did I know you? And it's not that you're doing all the work that you think this society wants you to do or what you think is going to get you more followers. You're doing the work that Jesus called you to do. And that's the only thing that really matters, because you're going to face Jesus at the end. You're not going to face the leaders of Black Lives Matter and they're going to say, how much did you support them? It's Jesus. And so just kind of making that a call out to all Catholics and Christians in this movement, like, whether you think you're doing good and you're kind of like, oh, we don't need to talk about that truth right now, it's too hard. Jesus says, I didn't know you, regardless of the work you did.
Yeah, I think it did come to mind. Matthew 7:21. Not everyone who calls me Lord, Lord will enter the kingdom of heaven. And again, people are like, what do you mean, Lord? What do you mean? I was prophesying in your name. I was healing in your name, so on and so forth. And it's like, yeah, I don't depart from you, evildoer. I do not know you. And I think we all need to, all of us, right, us included, we need to check ourselves. We need to check our intentions, right? I know in my daily prayer, I pray for purified intentions always, because it's difficult, right? We're fallen creatures. And so it's really easy to get prideful, right? It's really easy. I mean, I'm having, I don't get involved too much into it, but there's a couple of, online little debates I'm having with Catholic influencers, right? Like, what's going on with this statement? Like, what is your whole point of that, right? You have a huge platform, and quite honestly, you're misleading a lot of people, right? You're using a logical fallacy. And it's quite an ignorant statement, and then everyone's like, oh yeah, that's the greatest thing. Oh yeah, I'm gonna retweet or whatever it is. And I'm thinking, do you understand how big the millstone is that's around your neck at this point? So for our clergy, for our lay people, even us, right? We have a platform that we're speaking on. At the end, as you said, Miko, is like, it ain't gonna be. I'm not the judge at the end of your life, so you don't really got to worry about what Keone, Miko, and John have to say, but you do have to worry about what Jesus has to say. And if you think about Matthew 7, and you think about, do I want to hear those words? I don't know you. Depart from you, evildoer. I don't. So when you stand in truth, why does what you think about it matters? We even mentioned it in the last episode, right? We said, so many people just cannot handle truth, right? We've become we've been super soft about things. We go along to get along. And I think you never separate truth from love. So people will say, John, you're not being charitable. I'm like, I spoke truth. Now, if you're arguing with the delivery, then you probably have more of an issue with the message than you do with the delivery, because to me, somebody may come at me hard, but if what they're saying is true, it should make me think. Truth will cut like a sword right to the heart if you're open to it, if you're humble enough for it.
Yeah, and the thing that we talked about, County mentioned it last week. I think it's John 15, is that he says, when basically, if the world hated you, it hated me first, and if it loves you, basically you are of it. You are of the world if it loves you, and you are basically not with me. You're not with us, is what he's saying. And to me, that's so fascinating, because we were just having a talk the other day, and I was saying, you don't really, like, we've been so privileged in America. We have no sense of like Christian persecution, but it happens a lot more than we realize, and in like huge numbers, that we should be thankful every day that we live in this country. But I was thinking about, like, here, it's not like we get persecuted for saying the gospel. Like, if I say Jesus is Lord, most of the people that I know are like, yeah, cool, or they just ignore it. Like, I don't really agree, but it doesn't really matter. Like, we're all chilling. Like, no one. That's not the hard thing. And so, like, when you bring up these points of like, when Jesus says, not all those who say Lord, call me Lord, Lord will enter the gates, and all this idea that, like, I think people think like this is what he was saying. When those who don't love me, like, I'm really preaching his word, but like, that's not. The world still loves you though. So then, are you really preaching? Because he's saying they're not going to like you. He's saying they're going to hate you, and they hated me first. And it was because he said the harsh realities. And are you saying the harsh realities? Is it really that harsh to say, like, I think that there's a God? Like, I don't think it is. I don't think that's hard to say that we should go to heaven. We should act virtuous. Those aren't things that are like bringing people to like anger. Like, what did he just say right now? Like, we should love one another? I'm pissed. Like, no one thinks that. And so I think we got to, like, a lot of Christian and Catholic influence got to realize, like, are we saying what needs to be said, really, though? Like, not understanding that we have all these Rousseauian, Hobbesian terms that have been made up by these guys that didn't want to put God into our society, that made up all these terms that we're using now, and people continue to make up terms that don't have any meaning. And then we're using the same things without understanding it. And so it's like, we got to understand, that's not the hard stuff isn't to say that we believe Jesus is Lord. A lot of people agree with us. The hard stuff is saying, like, what you're saying is false. What you're saying is fabricated. What you're saying was made up by a philosopher in 1600s that did not like your God. He didn't want nothing to do with it. That's the hard part, is saying what we're saying right now, what we're following, this agenda that we're following, or this Marxist group, they're not with your side. That's what's hard to say, because people are going to attack you all day long. And then that's what he said. Gear up. That's what they're going to do. He's not, I mean, like, and it's like, me and Kelly were saying, like, we see a lot of Catholics, and it's almost like just Protestants who believe in the real presence. It's just these people that, like, just want to play super soft and lovey, and we just want to unite with people, but then we also believe in the real presence, so that makes us like Catholics in some way. But it's like, not really though, because like these people are all attacked. Socrates is attacked, Jesus is attacked for things that are hard to say. So if you're just saying things that are easy and are taken really well within society, to me it doesn't seem like you're actually following the call. To me, there's something deeper than that. And truth doesn't just come from John or Luke or Matt. Like, truth is universal, and it comes in so many different ways, and we tend to miss that because we're getting followed into these traps of hundreds of years of philosophy that wanted to take God out. And so it's on us, and it's our duty. We can say all day long that, like, you know what, I was misled, I wasn't brought up, but like you're still held responsible at the end of the day. So like truly educate yourself, truly try to find the truth. Ask yourself, where did this come from? Like this term that I'm using, whatever it is, where did that actually come from? Who has the intention? You know what I mean? Just really breaking things down. Because at the end of the day, we're responsible for what we're saying, what we believe. And it's not going to matter who brought it to you. What did you do with it? That's what God's going to ask.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as we, you might think about scripture, I think about Isaiah 5, where, the prophet says, woe to you who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness. I mean, think about the world we live in today, right? Where the words that we're using, think about the pro-life movement, right? That murdering babies every year is now called pro-choice. So we put these little, euphemisms to make it nice that it's somehow pro-choice. It's funny how it's not pro-choice for me to wear a mask or not, right? It's my body, my choice, but I don't get to make that choice. Somebody gets to make it for me. But when it comes down to, a woman's right to go and have an abortion, that's a whole different thing.
That's somehow a reproductive right when there's nothing reproducing about killing it.
Yeah, it's terminating a life. And so that's the problem is most Catholics won't talk about it, right? Because that's a little tough one, man, because I know a lot of people and it's just like, well, what is actually true charity? It's actually leading somebody towards truth. I mean, you think about the whole idea of actual debate, not argument in the sake of today, right? Like we just beat you into submission, but what's the goal of an argument? To find truth. And the truth is, like I was having this discussion online where people were saying, look, when you use this whole seamless garment theory, you're basically trying to level set all life issues, right? Alleged life issues and put them on the same plane. I'm thinking, if I think about the biggest evil we have today, it's probably that we murder our own children, right? And every time an abortion occurs, life ends. Every time. Racism, absolute evil. But does it always end in an innocent life being taken? Nope. Immigration doesn't always end in a life taken. Nope. Access to affordable health care, we all agree that's important, right? Does it always, every single time, end in a life taken? Nope. So when people are trying to debate like these Catholic influencers that are out there throwing it, trying to say like, these are all, you don't get to just choose one. And I know you know who I'm talking about out there. Come on. What you're doing is you're making a statement, you're virtue signaling, you're trying to put this and you're like, actually, the most, greatest evil we have in our world today, outside of the attack on marriage, is the fact that we murder our own children. That's a big deal, to the tune of almost 1 million a year. And so why is it a surprise for us that we're killing each other in the streets? And that you don't agree with me, therefore I don't even respect life. I'm going to take yours, because now we can't even disagree. We can't even, we've been talking about this, right? The fact that, for the listeners and the viewers out there, as Catholics, we believe in the dignity of the human person. So I've said it before, that my faith allows me to love you even when I don't like you, even when I don't agree with you. Right? It allows me to say, you know what? You're a child of God before you're the person in front of me. So I need to respect that, because I'll have to answer for that at the end of my life, which could be tomorrow, right? You never know. And this, as people start to freak out right now in this time, like, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die, right? Was a song. It's like, so for me, it's like, well, is the world ending, Keone? It's like, I don't know. Are you ready for it though? Because I don't get to make that decision. So my point would be is, you know what? If the world is ending, where are you going to go when it does? Because that's what I'm worried about. That's what we're trying to live it out in our houses, trying to figure out a way to navigate through this craziness that we're dealing with in our world, but in a way that creates virtue, cultivates virtue, and leads us to holiness, and ultimately to the point that we get to go to heaven. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, what does it matter? What's your life matter? You ain't taking your 401k. You don't get to take a U-Haul to heaven. So it's just like we gotta start thinking along those lines, instead of getting this whole this PC mentality where we're trying to separate truth from charity. You don't. That's not real truth then, and it's not real love. The minute that you kind of separate the two. So we want to talk about. I was going to read that quote that we can go right into. So Pope Emeritus Benedict, right, the previous pope before Pope Francis, who is now retired, he's emeritus, when he was just a father, in an interview, German radio, 1969. Okay, just do the math. 1969, talking about the future state of the church. So I'm just going to read a couple snippets here. He said, and he started off this kind of disclaimer when he was quoting St. Augustine. He said, man is an abyss. What will rise out of these depths, no one can see in advance. And he was basically, you're not going to know what's going to come of the church, but so just relax a little bit, but let me give it my best shot. So he says, the future of the church can and will issue from those whose roots are deep and who live from the pure fullness of their faith. Right now, we've been talking about it, right? There's a lot of Catholics drinking the Kool-Aid and a lot of them misleading a lot of people. And quite honestly, with this whole pandemic and the online masses, we're seeing less people attend mass. You hear all this stuff about people joining online masses or whatever. That's not really mass, just so you guys know. It's the reason why they give you a dispensation. But anyways, the future of the church will issue from those who have deep roots of faith, who have pure fullness of faith. He goes on to say, the future of the church, once again, as always, will be reshaped by saints, by men, that is, whose minds probe deeper than the slogans of today, go figure, who see more than others see, because their lives embrace a wider reality. Unselfishness, which makes men free, is attained only through the patience of small daily acts of self-denial. So he kind of spoke to that, right? That the daily acts of self-denial allow us to be truly free and liberated. He says, let us go a step farther. From the crisis of today, the church of tomorrow will emerge. A church that has lost much, she will become small and will have to start afresh, more or less from the beginning. She will no longer be able to inhabit many of the edifices she built in prosperity. As the number of her adherents diminishes, so it will lose many of her social privileges. Sound like anything that we can think of today? Barely can go to mass, barely be able to worship unless it's 25% or 100 of us. He says the church will be a more spiritual church, not presuming upon a political mandate, keeping God at the center. And so it seems certain to me, this is again Father Joseph Ratzinger, Pope Emeritus, as a priest before he was Pope. He says, it seems certain to me that the church is facing very hard times. The real crisis has scarcely begun. We will have to count on terrific upheavals, but I'm equally certain about what will remain at the end. Not the church of the political cult, which is dead already, but the church of faith. 1969.
That's just too many bars for me to fathom.
It's a mic drop.
This is kind of what we're saying, I guess. One, that Pope Benedict's the GOAT and resigned too early. Obvious point of today's episode. And the other one is that, this is what we got to take our peace within. This is the stuff that we should be reading and saying, you know what, we're doing right. We don't got to worry about if we lose followers. I don't got to worry about if people hate on me or call me whatever name they want to call me or all that kind of stuff. We just got to keep being us. If sometimes it's going to take you getting fired or whatever that is, and those people will for sure be on our prayers, and those people who fight for truth and stuff like that. But I think moving forward, as we kind of what we supposed to take away from this, how do we fight these things? Just by just continuing to stand in truth. You're gonna have to say things that are uncomfortable for other people, but so what? So what if you lose followers? So what if people call you mean names? I mean, like
grow some thick skin for real.
People call Ben Shapiro a Nazi. I mean, come on, dude. Seriously,
a devout practicing Jew is a Nazi.
So I think it's just time that we got to step up and have those conversations with people, have those dialogues. Just start having the trust in God, understanding that we're doing right and we just got to keep moving forward. We don't got to bow down to anybody. Let's start our own things. Let's keep fighting. Let's be strong. And don't apologize for anything that they want you to apologize, because it's nonsense. Mm-hmm. So just keep following goats like Pope Benedict 16. Keep following people like Fulton Sheen. Keep educating yourself. Don't let these people brainwash you. And fight the good fight.
I mean, even with us, right? Don't take our word for it, right? Go and do your research, right? We've been saying that too. Be a free thinker. Don't let somebody control your mind. Don't be somebody's puppet, right? I mean, the thing is you fact check things. We're going to say stuff that we may be in error. We may be misquoting something here and there. We're not saying that we're the end all be all. All we're saying is think for yourself. Yeah,
this PPK is more, it's not about agree with us. This is like, dude, there's other perspectives. The media wants to give you one perspective. There's people who can actually think for themselves. And you may not agree with everything that we're saying, but we're just saying question things around you. And let's have conversation. That's it. That's all we're saying.
One thing I want to touch on is that quote was the perfect, I think, segue into us today in the church, the state of the church, and how we can fight back. And some things that came to mind is that, we talked last week, the final battle, spiritual warfare. We're thinking of a fight. And how do you make yourself, how do you prepare yourself if it was a physical battle or a physical war?
Mm-hmm.
You become physically fit. And we need to become more spiritually fit. Mm-hmm. And he talks about self-denial. He talked about being unselfish. It's all growing in virtue, fasting every day. Like I said in the beginning of the episode, there's power in suffering. And you can redeem souls of your brothers and sisters, either on earth or in the church suffering in purgatory, by your suffering. So fast, offer it up for the priest, the clergy, the faithful, those that you don't like. Fast for them, pray for them, being unselfish, growing in virtue. And then the last thing, we touched on in the beginning, the idea that Mary already crushed the head of Satan. And what better way to fight that fight with her than pray the rosary? We should be praying the rosary every day. Because of that, but also because Mary has said it in pretty much every apparition that she's spoken of and appeared in our history of mankind. Mm-hmm. It's constant. Pray the rosary. So that's just a reminder that the battle is already won, but we're still in these fights, and God is waiting to see who's with him and who's not. And so we need to stay spiritually fit for this battle. Mm-hmm. So that the Lord will say, I did know you. Welcome home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would just say, a couple of things is, watch your intake of information, right? If you're doing more gossiping than you're reading the Gospels, if you're counting on the media rather than meditating on the Lord's life, you got problems. You know what I mean? And we've all even suffered within our own home. We've had to check ourselves and say, look, we got to disconnect because there's just so much going on. And when you're passionate about something, when you're passionate about truth, when you're passionate about your faith, when you're passionate about injustice and you want to fight it, yeah, I get it, right? You want to stay connected. But man, if it starts to steal your peace, then it's not from God. It is absolutely not from God. And I think that's why we have to kind of look, for the people out there, like look around you. And when we see the dichotomy, we said it in the last episode, you can judge a tree by its fruit. So if the very movement or whatever it is, whatever was the inspiration behind something, if it gets lost in all of that chaos and mess, then is it really doing what it was intended to do? Or has it been manipulated, has it been twisted, or was it just a wrong approach? And I think, that's the other part of it is, in order for you to maintain your peace, you got to control what you're consuming. And so you need to be praying more and fasting and praying the rosary. You need to be reading the Gospels. I mean, I think about during this time, as far as timely, like Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, right? And if you watch The Passion of Christ, and y'all, if you haven't, you should, right? Because it'll show you what God did to atone for our sins. And when the devil is in the ear, the Satan in the movies that's just kind of slithering over, and he's trying to cause doubt in our Lord's mind. And he says, do you really think one man can take on the sins of the whole world? And Jesus never acknowledges Satan at all. He keeps praying to the Father, except when he stood up and crushed the head of the snake that was in the garden. And so that's for us. We have to stay fixated on Christ and on God. Lord, if you will it, let this cup pass me, but not my will, your will be done. And I think that's for all of us. We have to stay prayerful. We have to ask God, what is my role in this issue today? If I'm called to sanctity, which we all are, we were born in this age for a reason. What is my role in this? And I think that's our prayer for everybody out there, including ourselves, right? Is what is it in our time, in our role, in our vocation, in my life, in our lives, that God is asking of us right now to be that beacon of light, to be that truth. And so I just want to end on, like the final quote, because I think Mika was emphasizing it, Keone was emphasizing it, but this idea of standing in truth no matter what. And St. Augustine says, the truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. You just have to let it loose and it'll defend itself. So in the end, let the lion loose. Truth, whether everybody thinks it's true or not, if it's true, it's true, right? And so just let it out, stand for it. In the end, you may lose a lot. but that's the life of a Christian and a disciple. So we just, continue to pray for you all. And before we go, Meeks,
Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
so thank you all for joining us on this episode. We appreciate all your feedback. We appreciate your viewership. We just reached 2,000 subscribers on World Ablaze YouTube channel. So keep following, liking, commenting, share with your friends, and let us know how we can help you. We'll be praying for you. Stay truthful, stay faithful, finish the race, and keep the faith. May God bless you. And until next time, get holy or die trying.